My mom accused me of stealing. What I found in her purse left everyone speechless, and then Growing up, my family always looked good on paper. We were the classic American unit: 2 parents, 3 kids, Sunday dinners, the occasional road trip to places like the Ozarks, and a house filled with the buzz of constant activity. From the outside, we probably looked like a Hallmark card come to life. But on the inside, there were cracks. Cracks I didn't see clearly until I was older. My name's Nate. I'm 31 now, and those cracks? They've grown into chasms. At the center of it all is my mom, Monica. Monica's a force of nature, the kind of woman who could organize a neighborhood fundraiser, run a PTA meeting, and remind you how you're not living up to your potential all before noon. She's 57 now, with this steely gaze that can either inspire guilt or compliance depending on what she wants. She thrives on control, hovering over everyone and everything like a hawk circling its prey. No decision goes unchecked, no event happens without her stamp of approval. If you've got something to say or plan to do, Monica's already 10 steps ahead, making sure it aligns with her vision. My older sister Emily is 35 and the embodiment of perfection, at least in Mom's eyes. Emily was always the golden child, a title she seemed born into. In school, she got straight A's, never broke curfew, and probably still sleeps with hospital corners on her bed. She works a polished job in corporate finance, drives a spotless black SUV, and knows how to flash just the right smile to get everyone on her side. Mom worships her. Emily can do no wrong. Ever. Then there's Ryan, my younger brother. Ryan's 28, quiet, and neutral to a fault. He's like Switzerland in human form. He keeps his head down and scrolls on his phone through most conversations, only chiming in when absolutely necessary. He doesn't like drama. He avoids it like a plague, and somehow, that makes him the safest one in the family. No one blames Ryan for anything because Ryan never gets involved. I envy him sometimes. And then there's me, stuck in the middle. I'm not Emily, so I'm not golden. But I'm also not Ryan, so I'm not invisible. I live somewhere between failure and disappointment in my mother's eyes, a place that feels permanent no matter what I do. I work a decent job, pay my bills, and live alone in a small apartment on the quieter side of St. Louis. Nothing fancy, nothing spectacular, just steady. It all started when Dad, Daniel, finally retired after 40 years working for the same construction company. He's 60 now, and his retirement should have been a moment to celebrate, a chance for him to relax and enjoy life for once. But with Monica in charge of the plans, the party became less about Dad and more about appearances. Mom didn't ask for input on the gathering. She just declared it. One afternoon, out of nowhere, I got a call. We're having a party next Saturday. For Dad. Everyone needs to be there. It's important. That was her way of saying, don't embarrass me, Nate. I knew the drill. When Mom said important, what she meant was that the event needed to be flawless, and that included our behavior. For years, best behavior in the Monroe household has translated to, don't argue, don't question, and for God's sake, don't make Mom look bad. The week leading up to the party was filled with tension. Mom has this habit, one I've come to resent, of calling Emily and me separately to gossip about the other. I got my turn the day before the party. Emily found the perfect gift for your father, she told me in a voice that practically sang. It's a beautiful designer watch. She put so much thought into it. I already knew what was coming next. So what are you bringing? I paused, debating whether or not to tell her. I'd spent the past couple of weeks working on a scrapbook for Dad, a collection of photos, newspaper clippings, and notes from people he'd worked with over the years. It wasn't flashy, but it was personal. It felt right. I made a scrapbook, I finally said. There was silence on the other end of the phone, long enough to let me know what she thought. Then came the dagger disguised as encouragement. Well, I'm sure he'll appreciate the effort, she said. The effort. Not the gift, not the thought, but the effort. Her tone was polite, but the meaning was loud and clear. It's not enough. I'd been through this cycle before. Emily would show up with something expensive and extravagant, and Mom would act like she'd parted the Red Sea. Meanwhile, anything I did, even if it came from the heart, would be met with faint praise at best. I told myself I didn't care, but deep down, it still stung. By the time Saturday rolled around, I was determined not to let the day get to me. I spent extra time perfecting the scrapbook that morning, making sure every corner was straight, every note was in place. I wanted it to be perfect for Dad, because he deserved it. He deserved better than all this nonsense. I ended up running a little late because of it, just 10 minutes, but in my mom's world, that might as well have been an hour. I parked on the curb, took a deep breath, and walked into my parents' house. The smiles that greeted me were plastered on like wallpaper. Everyone else was on time. Mom said with her signature casual edge, like she was just observing, not criticizing. I let it slide. I'd learned by now that pushing back wouldn't get me anywhere. I handed her the gift to put with the others, and that's when I saw Emily. She was standing next to Mom like her faithful lieutenant, dressed in some designer dress that probably cost more than my rent. She flashed me a smile, a perfect, polished smile, and then turned her attention back to Mom, soaking up the praise for helping with the party. Meanwhile, Ryan was exactly where I expected him to be, off to the side, hunched in an armchair, glued to his phone. He gave me a quick nod of acknowledgement before going back to scrolling. The house was buzzing with distant relatives, cousins, and neighbors. Chatter floated through the air like white noise, but underneath it was something heavier, something I couldn't shake. Dinner came and went. Mom made sure to remind everyone that she prepared everything from scratch, like she'd single-handedly harvested the vegetables and butchered the chicken. Then, after dessert, it was time for the gifts. This was when the cracks in the family picture began to split wide open. Emily's watch was up first. It was presented in a sleek black box, the kind of box that practically screamed expensive. Mom beamed as she handed it to Dad, gushing about how thoughtful Emily was to know exactly what he needed. Dad smiled, thanked her, and slipped the watch on. The room burst into applause. Then it was my turn. I picked up the scrapbook and walked it over to Dad, explaining softly that it was a collection of memories from his career. Photos of completed projects, clippings from local papers, and notes from old colleagues. Dad's face softened as he opened it, his calloused fingers gently flipping through the pages. "This is amazing, Nate," he said quietly, genuinely. "Thank you." But when I looked at Mom, I saw it. That tight smile. "It's very sentimental," she said, her voice light but clipped. Not a word about effort this time, but not much better. I tried not to let it bother me. I really did. But then, Monica announced that something was missing, and everything started to unravel. For a few seconds, I thought I'd misheard her. The room had quieted just enough to make Monica's voice crystal clear. "The envelope with Emily's gift is missing," she said, her tone cutting through the polite chatter like a blade. At first, no one reacted. People shifted in their seats or glanced around awkwardly, waiting for Monica to clarify. I thought she'd laugh it off or say she'd misplaced it, but no, this wasn't one of those moments. "It was right here on the kitchen counter," she continued, gesturing vaguely toward the other room. "It's gone now. Gone." The word hung in the air. I watched his heads turn toward Emily, who was sitting smugly by Mom, one manicured hand resting on her knee. She tilted her head, looking equal parts concerned and theatrical, and asked, "Are you sure, Mom? I could have sworn I saw it earlier." "I'm positive," Monica replied, her eyes narrowing slightly as she scanned the room. Then her gaze landed on me, and I felt it. The weight of suspicion. It started subtly, just a quick glance at first, one I tried to ignore. But Monica has a way of making something small feel suffocating. I cleared my throat. "What envelope?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "It was a white envelope," she said slowly, as if explaining something to a child. "It had cash in it. A gift for your father from Emily." I froze. Cash? Since when does Emily gift cash? She's the queen of luxury gifts. "I didn't even know there was an envelope," I said honestly. "I've been here for all of 30 minutes. Monica didn't respond right away. Instead, she pursed her lips and scanned the room again, her pause deliberate. Then she turned to the rest of the family. "I just don't understand how it could disappear. We were all here. I hate to think someone would, you know." She let the sentence trail off, letting the silence say what she wouldn't. The implication was loud and clear. Someone had taken it, and by someone, she meant me. I felt my pulse quicken, my face starting to flush. My mom didn't have to say it outright. She didn't need to point a finger. The damage was done the moment she dropped that carefully timed pause. I didn't take anything, I said firmly, looking straight at her. I walked in, handed over my gift, and that's it. Monica raised her eyebrows, as though I'd said too much too quickly. No one's accusing anyone, Nate, she replied sweetly, the kind of tone she uses when she's setting you up. I just think it's odd. Things don't just vanish, do they? Emily, of course, jumped in right on cue. Now that I think about it, she began, Nate did seem a little off when he got here. You were acting nervous. Nervous. I turned to her, disbelief boiling under my skin. I wasn't nervous, I snapped. I showed up late because I was finishing Dad's gift. That's it. Emily shrugged, her lips curling slightly. I'm not saying you did anything. I'm just saying it's strange. The tension in the room was unbearable. I could feel everyone watching me, cousins, aunts, uncles, all shifting uncomfortably, too polite to speak but too curious to look away. I glanced at Ryan, who was still glued to his phone, pretending none of this was happening. I almost envied him. Maybe it got moved, I said, trying to sound rational. Or someone picked it up by mistake. Monica shook her head. No, I put it in the kitchen myself. I saw it there earlier. It was right on the counter before the gifts were opened. Then she delivered the blow that sent the room spiraling. I hate to bring this up, Nate, but you've had money problems before. There it was. My chest tightened, and suddenly the room felt too small. She was referring to college, 8 years ago, when I'd hit a rough patch financially and had borrowed a little money from my parents to cover rent after losing a part-time job. I'd paid it back in full within a year, but Monica never forgot. She filed those things away, ready to weaponize them when the moment called for it. That was years ago, I said through clenched teeth. And you know I paid you back. I'm not accusing you, Monica said again, her voice sickly sweet. I just think we should all be honest here. Honest? She was dragging my name through the dirt in front of half the family and calling it honesty? I haven't touched your envelope, I said, louder now, looking around at everyone. My voice carried, but no one spoke up, not even Dad, who sat in the corner looking deeply uncomfortable but still silent. It stung to see him sitting there, doing nothing, as if neutrality made him innocent. Monica sighed dramatically and looked around the room. Well, if no one's going to admit to anything, I suppose it's pointless to keep asking. Her words were calm, but her eyes still burned into me. I was guilty in her mind, and she was letting everyone know it. Emily folded her arms and leaned back against her chair. It's just so unfortunate, she said with a pitying glance in my direction. That was it. I stood up. You know what's unfortunate? Being accused of stealing when I haven't done a damn thing wrong. The room went silent. Relax, Nate, Monica said, her tone condescending. There's no need to get defensive. Defensive? You're the one implying I stole from my own father's gift. My voice was sharp now, the frustration boiling over. Emily's smirk disappeared as I looked between her and Mom. I'm not going to sit here and be the scapegoat for your missing envelope, I continued. If you want to throw accusations around, fine, but I can prove exactly where I've been and what I've done all day. Monica's expression faltered for just a second. Nate, no, I interrupted, pulling my phone out of my pocket. If you're so sure I'm the one who did this, let's go through it step by step. Right here, right now. I could feel every pair of eyes on me as I unlocked my phone. My heart pounded in my chest, but I wasn't about to back down. If my own family wanted to accuse me of being a thief, they damn well have to face the truth when it hit them. The room was so quiet I could hear my own breathing. Sit down, I said, my voice steady now. Let's settle this. The room was frozen. Every eye locked on me as I stood there, phone in hand. My voice was calm, but inside, my pulse was pounding like a drum. Let's settle this right now, I repeated, scanning their faces. Monica looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Emily was staring at me with wide-eyed indignation, and everyone else sat stiffly, unsure of where to look. Ryan, still in the corner, finally glanced up from his phone, his expression wary, like he knew things were about to get messy. Nate, this isn't necessary, Monica said, trying to smooth the tension in her practiced, matriarchal tone. I never accused you of anything. I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding. She was backpedaling now, trying to sound reasonable, but it was too late. The damage was done. I looked at her directly. You implied it was me the second you brought up my so-called money problems, and Emily sitting there, throwing in her little observations, only made it worse. So no, we're not sweeping this under the rug. Emily scoffed, leaning forward. You're making this a bigger deal than it needs to be. I shot her a glare. You threw me under the bus, Emily. And you didn't hesitate for a second. Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't say anything. That alone told me she knew what she'd done. I turned back to the room, flipping my phone screen toward them. If you want proof that I didn't take anything, here it is. I've got my whole day tracked. I opened my banking app first. This is my bank account. Everything's accounted for. No withdrawals, no cash transactions. I don't even have $700 in cash to take. I turned my phone toward Monica, holding it there long enough for her to see the numbers on the screen. She glanced at it quickly before looking away, as if the evidence itself offended her. That doesn't prove anything, Nate. Oh, we're not done yet, I said, my voice cutting through the stale air. I opened my budgeting app next, scrolling through the entries for that morning. Here's my grocery run this morning at 9:18. I grabbed a few things for the week. Then here's my gas purchase right after at 9:45. Every dollar accounted for. See any giant, unexplainable gaps? A couple of cousins leaned in, watching the screen as I flipped through the receipts. They weren't saying anything, but their interest was clear. Maybe out of curiosity, maybe because they wanted to see Monica squirm. Mom's expression didn't change much, but I could see the discomfort growing behind her eyes. And just in case you still think I'm lying, I continued, tapping over to my location history, here's my GPS log for the day. It shows I drove straight from my apartment to your house, Monica. No stops, no detours. I held the phone high enough for everyone to see the timestamps and dotted map. It was irrefutable. I hadn't been anywhere near a bank, a shop, or any other suspicious location. I hadn't done anything wrong, and I was sick to death of being made to feel like I had. The silence that followed was long and uncomfortable. Ryan was the first to break it, shifting in his seat and speaking up for the first time all night. It looks solid to me, he said quietly. I don't see how Nate could have taken anything. His words weren't loud, but in the room full of tense air, they landed like a brick. A couple of my cousins murmured in agreement. Monica looked sharply at Ryan, like she was caught off guard by his sudden loyalty. He wasn't exactly taking sides, but just him voicing that little bit of support made a difference. Emily, however, couldn't let it go. But why are you being so defensive, Nate? It's not helping you look innocent. I turned to her, my patience snapping like a twig. I'm being defensive because I'm defending myself, Emily, because I didn't do a damn thing wrong, and you're all too eager to believe the worst about me. You're the one acting like some amateur detective, throwing out baseless accusations. Her cheeks flushed red, but she didn't say anything else. For a moment, it felt like the tide was turning in my favor. A few cousins were nodding along quietly, and Ryan seemed to back me up in his low-key, neutral way. I looked toward my dad, hoping he might finally say something, anything, to tip the scales. But he stayed in his chair, running his hand over his face, avoiding eye contact with everyone. He looked uncomfortable, almost guilty, but still, nothing. It was like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. I felt a flicker of disappointment. He was supposed to be the buffer, the one person who could cut through Mom's nonsense when she went too far. But he just sat there, letting it happen. That was when Monica made her move. She crossed her arms and leaned back in her chair, tilting her chin upward in that stubborn way she does when she doesn't want to be proven wrong. Well, Nate, she said slowly, I suppose all your apps and maps and receipts are very impressive. But technology doesn't prove everything. I blinked. What's that supposed to mean? Monica sighed dramatically, her voice full of condescending sweetness. All I'm saying is that none of this proves what happened to the envelope. Sometimes you just have to trust your gut, and my gut says something isn't adding up here. I stared at her, my blood boiling. Your gut? You're throwing around accusations based on your gut? That's not how this works, Mom. She didn't respond. Instead, she looked around the room, as if waiting for someone else to jump in and back her up. Emily, of course, stepped into the void. You're taking this way too personally, Nate. Maybe if you didn't act so shady all the time, Mom wouldn't have to worry. That was the last straw. I straightened up, shoving my phone back in my pocket. You know what? I said, looking between the two of them. I'm done. I don't need to sit here and defend myself against baseless accusations just because the two of you have decided I'm the family screw-up. Monica's face twitched, like she wasn't expecting me to push back this hard. Nate, no. I cut her off. You made up your minds about me before I even got here. If you want to find your missing envelope, go ahead and keep looking. But don't expect me to sit here and let you treat me like a criminal. With that, I turned and started walking toward the door. I could feel everyone's eyes following me, their murmurs starting to bubble as I grabbed my coat. But I wasn't leaving yet. Not really. Something about Monica's expression, about the way she looked just a little too guilty, made me pause at the doorway. And then I saw it. A small flash of white. It was barely visible, just a corner peeking out from the side pocket of Monica's purse, which was slung over the back of one of the kitchen chairs. My stomach dropped. I turned back to the room, my voice sharp and clear. Hold on. Monica froze. What? Without waiting for her response, I strode back into the room, right over to her purse. I heard her start to protest, but I ignored her. I reached down and pulled the white envelope from the side pocket, holding it up for everyone to see. It was the missing envelope. The room fell dead silent. Is this what you were looking for? I asked, my voice cold. The silence in the room was like a vacuum, sucking up all the air. I held up the envelope for everyone to see, my hand steady, even though I felt like my insides were on fire. Is this what you're looking for? I repeated, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. Monica's face drained of color. Her usual confidence, the authority she wielded like a sword, faltered for just a second. Then, as if she'd snapped back into character, she sat up straighter and plastered on that tight, practiced smile. Oh, well, how did that end up there? She said, her voice high and feigned as she glanced around the room. I must have put it in my purse earlier and completely forgotten. I've been so busy today. I probably wasn't paying attention. Her words were light, but the way her fingers fidgeted with her sweater's hem told me everything I needed to know. I narrowed my eyes at her. You forgot? You spent the last hour implying I stole it, Mom. The accusation hung there, unspoken but loud enough for everyone to hear again. My voice wasn't loud, but I didn't need to yell. I could see the shift happening around the room, people glancing at each other, exchanging looks they didn't dare voice out loud. Monica waved a hand dismissively, trying to brush it off. Oh, Nate, don't be so dramatic. I never accused you of anything. It was just a misunderstanding. No harm done. No harm done. I laughed bitterly, unable to help myself. No harm done? You spent half the night tearing me down in front of the entire family. You dragged up things from years ago just to paint me as some kind of thief. That's not a misunderstanding, Mom. That's malicious. Her smile faltered, the mask cracking for just a second. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out how to spin this back in her favor. Emily stepped in to defend her, as I knew she would. Okay, Nate, calm down. Mom said it was an accident. There's no need to make a scene over this. I turned to her, my voice cold. Make a scene? I didn't make this a scene, Emily. That was all, Mom. She didn't lose the envelope. She hid it. And she knew exactly what she was doing when she started accusing me. Her face flushed, but before she could fire back, Ryan, quiet, invisible Ryan, finally spoke up. He's right, Ryan said softly. Everyone turned to look at him, shocked that he'd joined the conversation. He didn't raise his voice, but the weight of his words landed like a brick. The envelope was in her purse. It doesn't make sense to accuse Nate for no reason, especially after the way Mom brought up his past. Monica shot him a sharp glare, her voice suddenly more defensive. Ryan, I don't know what you're talking about. I was never accusing anyone. I was just what? I interrupted. Just planting the idea in everyone's head that I was the one to blame? Do you think I don't know how you operate, Mom? The little comments, the passive-aggressive digs, the innocent concerns? You've been doing this to me for years. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I wasn't letting her twist this back around. Not this time. I've spent my whole life being treated like I'm not good enough. No matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, it's never enough for you. And tonight you humiliated me in front of everyone to prove. What, exactly? That you can still control me? That you can still make me look like the black sheep? The room was silent again. Monica's voice finally cracked through it, shaky and defensive. I don't know why you're acting like this, Nate. I've always wanted the best for you. If you feel like you're being treated unfairly, maybe you should take a look at yourself first. There it was, the twist, the blame, the gaslighting, the same line she always pulled when someone dared to stand up to her. But this time, I wasn't biting. Don't do that, I said flatly, shaking my head. Don't turn this around and make it my fault. You accused me of stealing money that you hid. And the worst part is, you knew everyone would believe you because you've been telling them for years that I'm the screw-up. I glanced around the room then, making sure I looked everyone in the eye. Dad, Emily, my cousins, the uncles, the aunts. If any of you still think I'm the problem here, I can't help you. But I'm not going to sit here and take the blame for something I didn't do just because it's convenient for her. Dad finally spoke, his voice quiet. Monica, maybe we should stop this now. The envelope was found. Let's not make it worse. I turned to him. It's already worse, Dad. You sat there and said nothing while she let this go on. You're just as much a part of this as she is. He flinched a little, looking down at his hands. I didn't enjoy saying it, but it was true. He had let her steer the ship for so long that he didn't know how to stop her anymore. Monica stood up abruptly, the scrape of her chair echoing in the room. I don't know why you're trying to turn everyone against me, Nate. All I wanted was to celebrate your father's retirement, and now look at what you've done. You've ruined it. I ruined it? I said, incredulous. You accused me of being a thief. You turned this into a spectacle. I defended myself, and now I'm the bad guy? That's on you, Mom, not me. The weight of everything hit me at once, and suddenly I couldn't be there anymore. The suffocating tension, the stares, the whispers I knew were coming the second I walked out the door. It was too much. I'm done, I said finally, grabbing my coat. I'm not sticking around to play this game anymore. I walked out, ignoring Emily's muttered comment about overreacting and Monica's attempts to call me back. I could still feel every pair of eyes following me, but I didn't care. I couldn't care. By the time I got to my car, the adrenaline had started to wear off, and all that was left was exhaustion. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, replaying everything over in my head. I'd cleared my name. I'd proven I didn't take the envelope, but it didn't feel like a win. What kind of family accuses you of something like that? What kind of mother looks at her son and sees a villain? I sat there for a long time, staring out the windshield into the darkness, feeling like a stranger to my own blood. I had no idea how I was supposed to come back from this, or if I even wanted to. One thing was certain, though. Things couldn't go back to the way they were. Not anymore. The drive home was quiet, except for the low hum of my car's engine and the occasional flick of the turn signal. St. Louis at night was a ghost town. The streets mostly empty, the lights of gas stations and closed stores blurring past me. I thought leaving the party would make me feel better, like walking away would lift the weight off my shoulders. Instead, the silence was heavy, pressing into my chest with every mile. By the time I got back to my apartment, it was almost midnight. I tossed my keys on the table and sank onto the couch, staring at the ceiling. The last few hours played on a loop in my head. Mom's pointed accusations, Emily's smug glances, the humiliation of standing there while half the family questioned my character. I thought I'd feel victorious after proving my innocence, but all I felt was drained. My phone buzzed from my pocket, pulling me out of my thoughts. I didn't want to check it, already bracing for whatever messages might be waiting, but curiosity got the better of me. It was Ryan. Ryan, you okay? That was insane. You didn't deserve that. It was simple, short, and very Ryan. I exhaled, feeling a flicker of relief. He hadn't said much at the party, but now I knew where he stood. Me, thanks. I'm fine. Just tired of all of it. He didn't respond, but the message was enough. Knowing at least one person in my family believed me, that I wasn't imagining the whole thing, felt like a lifeline. The next morning, I woke up to a group text from Monica. A long-winded message about how the party didn't go as planned, but that we should all focus on what really matters, Dad's retirement. She ended it with a line about how family is everything, a classic move in her playbook. Slap a bandage over a gaping wound and pretend it never happened. I stared at the message, feeling a fresh wave of frustration. It was like she thought a few carefully chosen words could erase what she'd done. I was about to ignore it when my phone buzzed again. Emily had taken her grievances to social media. One of my cousins, probably feeling a little nosy, forwarded me a screenshot of her latest post. It was a selfie of Emily in the kitchen during the party, looking sad and wistful, with a caption that read, "Family drama ruins the happiest moments. Some people just can't let go of the past." The comments under it were exactly what you'd expect. A flood of supportive messages from her friends. "You're so strong, Emily. Don't let anyone ruin your light." One person even wrote, "Jealousy is ugly. Stay above it, girl." I tossed my phone onto the couch, laughing bitterly to myself. Of course, Emily was spinning this to make herself the victim. She'd been doing it for years, so why stop now? Before I could stew on it for too long, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Dad. I hesitated before answering, unsure of what to expect, but finally picked up. "Hey, Dad." "Nate," he said, his voice careful, almost tentative. "I just wanted to check in." "Check in?" I asked, leaning back against the couch. "About what? The part where Mom accused me of stealing money in front of half the family, or the part where the envelope turned out to be in her purse?" He sighed, the kind of heavy sigh I'd heard so many times before. "Look, I know what happened last night wasn't fair. Your mom, she gets carried away sometimes." "Carried away?" I repeated, anger flaring in my chest. "She humiliated me, Dad. She let everyone think I was some kind of thief. And you just sat there and let her." There was silence on his end. I could hear him shifting, probably running a hand through his hair the way he does when he's trying to find the right words. "I didn't want to make things worse," he said finally. "I thought it was better to let things calm down." "You thought it was better for you, Dad," I snapped. "Not for me. You let her tear me apart to protect her precious image." "Nate," he began, but I didn't let him finish. "I'm not doing this anymore," I said firmly. "If you want to keep pretending everything's fine, that's on you. But I'm done showing up to these family events just to be treated like I'm the problem." The silence stretched on, and for a moment, I thought he might argue. Instead, he said quietly, "I'm sorry, son." It caught me off guard. Not because it fixed anything, but because it was the closest thing to accountability I'd heard from him in years. "I'll talk to her," he added. "I'll try to get her to see how wrong that was." I didn't respond. I knew Monica well enough to know she'd never admit fault willingly. But I appreciated that, for once, Dad was at least acknowledging the mess. After we hung up, I decided to take the day for myself. I went for a long drive, no destination in mind, just letting the quiet of the road clear my head. I ended up at Forest Park, a sprawling greenscape in the middle of St. Louis. I parked the car and walked aimlessly for a while, watching families picnic and joggers pass by, their headphones in, their faces focused on everything but the world around them. It felt surreal, knowing how small my world had become. A stupid missing envelope had torn open a lifetime of frustration and resentment. And while I'd always known my family wasn't perfect, I never thought it would get to this point. When I got home, my phone was waiting for me again. This time, it was a flood of texts from my extended family. A few cousins reached out to say they couldn't believe what happened and that they were on my side. One even wrote, "Your mom was out of line. We've seen how she treats you, Nate. You don't deserve that." It was validating, sure, but it also stung. All these years, they'd noticed the favoritism, the way Monica put Emily on a pedestal and treated me like an afterthought. Yet no one said anything. It made me wonder how different things might have been if someone had spoken up earlier. Then there were the other messages, the the ones urging me to forgive and forget for the sake of family. An uncle texted, "Monica's your mom. She loves you. Don't let one night ruin everything." I didn't bother responding. It was easy for them to say that when they weren't the ones being accused of stealing money, being humiliated in front of everyone, or having years of baggage dumped on them in a single evening. Later that night, Ryan called. He rarely ever called, so I answered immediately. "Hey," I said. "Hey," he replied, his voice quiet, like he was calling from the next room over. I wanted to say I'm sorry for not speaking up sooner. I should have said something when Mom started in on you. I was surprised." "Thanks, man. It's not your fault, though." "No, it is," he said, and I could tell he was being genuine. "I've stayed out of things for years because I hate drama, but that wasn't fair to you. I saw what was happening, and I said nothing. That makes me part of the problem. I didn't know how to respond, so I just said, 'I appreciate it. Are you gonna be okay?'" he asked. "Yeah," I said, even though I wasn't sure I believed it yet. "I'll figure it out." We hung up, and I sat there in the quiet of my apartment, staring at the half-empty beer bottle on my coffee table. For the first time in years, I felt like I was seeing everything clearly. I loved my family, but love didn't mean letting them walk all over me. If they weren't going to respect me, then I wasn't going to keep showing up just to play the villain in their story. Something had to change, and for the first time, I knew exactly where to start.